Joining us now is Katie Benner, Justice Department reporter with the New York Times. She and three of her colleagues at the Times broke this story tonight. Ms. Benner, thank you so much for talking us through this. Congratulations on this scoop.
Thanks for having me.
I am not asking you to comment on your sources, and I do not want to ask you to associate yourself with what I just said in terms of SDNY squawking. You are not describing your sources. I don't have any inside information about it. I want to make that clear. But beyond that, is there anything that I just described that missed the point or got any of this wrong? Or is that the basic plot that you and your colleagues have been able to describe here?
Yeah, I think that you said a lot. You represented a lot of the story really well. One point I think to add is that Bill Barr believes truly that as the Attorney General, he does have the right to have strict oversight over the Southern District. The Southern District is independent not because it is allowed to be by something in the U.S. Attorney's Manual or by statute, but simply because of tradition. And as you can imagine, somebody who wants to strongly control everything that happens in the department, for him, the Southern District has been particularly a thorn in his side, and U.S. Attorney Berman particularly a target.
In terms of what Mr. Barr believes he should be controlling, though, does it seem to be out of proportion the way that Attorney General Barr has personally gotten himself involved in cases that touch on the president's personal political and business interests compared to other types of cases that don't relate to the president, whether at the Southern District of New York or in other U.S. attorneys' offices around the country? It certainly seems like an unusual amount of personal intervention, all of which seems to go toward lenience for the president's associates.
Sure. Now, before I address that, first, I want to note that Attorney General Barr did speak on this point to NPR today. So in his own words, he believes that these accusations are essentially a conspiracy theory whipped up usually by the media or by people who just do not trust the Justice Department law and order. But I want to make sure that I put in his defense before I also say, when you step back and you look at this pattern of behavior, it is one of the reasons why people suspect that he is intervening to protect the president. Yes, he is a heavy-handed attorney general, and he is a micromanager, to say the least. So it's not surprising per se that he would want to know what's going on in really, really sensitive matters and want to manage them. That said, of course, between the president's public statements and his tweets, the way that he regards Attorney General Barr, the fact that he's all but called him his fixer or his guy on the inside, I mean, he sort of danced around that theme. Of course, people will say, this is part of a pattern and practice on the part of the Attorney General to make sure that he has his ear to the ground for anything that could hurt the president.
You and your colleagues at the end of this piece tonight describe the Attorney General also taking a very active role in what I colloquially called the Levin Igor case, this case related to Rudy Giuliani's associates and their potentially or allegedly having directed hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal contributions to Republican campaigns and to a super PAC supporting the president's reelection effort. The delay of their case so that it's now going to happen, their trial is going to happen after the election, may certainly be explained just by the pandemic, just by the fact that COVID has delayed all trials and has delayed a lot of different proceedings. But I do wonder, and I just have to ask if your reporting indicates anything about whether Attorney General Barr is trying to shape the way that prosecution goes forward. In December, federal prosecutors at SDNY said in open court that a superseding indictment is likely in that case, one that a lot of people expected to mean Rudy Giuliani. That's very close to the president's interest. Is there any sense that that's the type of interest, that part of the case is what Barr is interested in or working on?
Sure. I'll take your question in a couple of parts. One, on the timing. The delay really was, I believe, because all of the courts were shut down due to COVID. It was hard to get a grand jury. There were no juries, and there was not a lot of activity happening in the courts. So unless something was essential, like life or death or a criminal matter that was of the utmost importance, national security matters mostly, you were not going to see any action happen in the courts. So that is truly a big reason for why this has been delayed. Now, interestingly, again, this gets to the relationship between Attorney General Barr and the Southern District. Another part of your question, which was, is he very closely scrutinizing this matter? He is. Now, one reason is because we have Justice Department policy saying anything that is going to be a matter of public interest, anything that's going to make the news, anything that pertains to a public figure, an important public figure in government, like the president, every prosecutorial step has to be run by the Deputy Attorney General's office and the Attorney General's office. And I am told that that is exactly what's happening in this matter. Now, of course, we also know that there are people within the Southern District of New York who do not trust Mr. Barr's motives, thanks to these past encounters with him, not just on the Michael Cohen case, but also on Halkbank and others. So this, it just speaks again to this very, very broken relationship between the Southern District and Main Justice, and this bigger fear that the Attorney General is able to use existing rules for the president's ends.
Yeah, existing rules, exactly. And being able to put in context his behavior toward things that affect the president versus his behavior toward run-of-the-mill things in the Justice Department, I feel like is that's where the story is becoming very clear. Katie Benner, Justice Department reporter with the New York Times, thank you for helping us understand this new reporting tonight, and congratulations to you and your colleagues.